Before Ascension. So it's the last of the Pascha season, sort of goes all the way to Pentecost, but sort of we say Christ is risen. The sort of meat of Pascha season ends with Ascension. So this is our last fully Paschal Sunday. Every Sunday is a little Pascha, but this is the last one of the season. And we talk about blindness. The story we read today from John's Gospel is about Jesus healing the blind man. But for it to make any sense whatsoever, you actually have to start reading in chapter 8, where, remember, they brought to Jesus a woman caught in adultery. Remember that story? And he just doodles on the ground and doesn't say anything. And then finally he says, whoever's without sin, let that one throw the first stone. Right? And everybody left, and he says to the woman, where are your condemners? Who's going to condemn you? Well, they're not here. And Jesus said, well, then neither will I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And then the next thing he says is, I am the light of the world. If anyone follows me, he will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The light of life. Now, he's using the word life here in a way different from what we usually use. And in Greek, it's pretty clear because there's two different words. But in English, we only have one word. Right? In Greek, there's the word bios, right? The biology of life. Right? And that's usually what we're referring to when we're talking about life. We're talking about the biology, the physics, the electronics, the plumbing, right? All of that stuff, right? Stuff that life is made up of. And yet, life would not mean much, would it, if it was just biology and physics and electronics and plumbing, right? It wouldn't. Why bother? In fact, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, end their life because they come to a point where they say, is this all there is? Is this all it's about? Plumbing? Biology? Cell division? Is that it? If that's all there is, why bother? But it isn't all there is. But in order to see something more, you have to have a different kind of light. Not the light of the sun, the photons that are vibrating like waves that bounce off things, so I can see you, not because you're radiating light, but because the light of the sun is bouncing all over the place, and we make electricity with it and all kinds of things, and we can see with it. I can see the bios just fine with the light of the sun. But if I'm going to see a different kind of life, the Greek word for this kind is zoe, right? If I'm going to see a different kind, or at least biblical Greek, modern Greek, I don't know what you're doing nowadays, right, with Greek. But I only know the biblical stuff. I don't know the new stuff. It's a different kind of life. And to see that life requires a different kind of light. So Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows after me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And then the religious leaders, right, people who have my job, start arguing with him. And it goes on for about 40 verses. This argument. Well, wait a minute. How can you say that? Based on what authority? Who are you? How can you say that? Right? And are you greater than Abraham? And all this argument goes on. And at the end of the argument, they again try to kill him. But his hour has not yet come. So he walks by. He just walks out. And then that's where our reading comes. He just got done saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of light. And as he walked by, he saw a man born blind. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, said, what authority do you have to say, I am the light of the world? And now he's going to show them. Now the disciples think, oh, blindness must be somebody's fault. And I tell you, in confession, I deal with this all the time. People want to find out whose fault it is. It's not my fault. It's my fault. It's my parents' fault. It's my boss's fault. It's someone's fault. This is exactly what Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden, wasn't it? The Lord comes to Adam and says, did you eat the fruit? And Adam says, it wasn't my fault, it was the woman. And he says to the woman, did you do this? She says, it wasn't my fault, it was the snake. And still, we do this. Jesus walks by and sees a blind man. And the disciples say, oh, whose fault is it? Right? No. Granted, it is sometimes helpful to know, or to have a sense of, oh, I have this, problem because when I was a little kid, my mother never gave me cookies, and so now I have an obsession with cookies. And okay, maybe that's helpful. Maybe we should all go to therapy. We should all have a good shrink who can help us identify, yes, the reason that, I told you one of my weird things. I have this weird thing for coats. I have a closet full of coats. Every time I see a cool coat, I want to buy it. It's really, it's a weird thing. You know what? I've gotten some help about that. And it turns out, go back when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my dad just remarried, his new wife didn't like the kids. Who could blame her? We lived in a little teeny trailer, and there were 3 kids who weren't hers, and we were making so she kicks us out in the middle of a New York winter. And what do kids do as soon as they go out into the snow is they get soaking wet, and then she wouldn't let us back in. And it stood out there freezing for a really long time. And so your shrink says, there it is. That's the connection. That's why you have that weird thing about coats, because you had that bad experience. Okay, great. But knowing that doesn't make it go away. Still, if I go to the bay and they're having a sale on coats, last time we went to the bay together, I bought a coat. I said, I could really use a coat like this. I don't have a coat like this. I need a coat like this. The problem is knowing, even if you can affix the blame, even if you know where it came from, you still have to overcome it. Knowing where it came from isn't an excuse to say, okay, everybody else has to just deal with my bad attitude. Right? Sorry, you guys just have to deal with it, because when I was a little kid, my dad wouldn't let me have puppies. so now you guys have to deal with it, right? No. Okay, maybe I know where it came from, but now I have to follow Jesus. The light of life has to illumine me. I've got to overcome it in the light of Christ, with the grace of God. I have to become who God is calling me to be, not the damaged person I am. That's what I bring to Christ. I have nothing else but the damage that I am. But bringing this damaged person to Christ, Christ says, now follow me. Follow me, and I will give you the light of life. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.